Thank you, Martin. Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would first thank you very much for inviting me to talk about climate change, adaptation, and development, and what is at stake. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to discuss the issue with you, in particular as your scientific community has made significant contributions to improving the understanding of the human dimensions of global environmental change. The issue now has jump-started. It took the global community some time to fully recognize the relevance of adaptation to climate change because environmental policymakers have long focused on climate change mitigation and regarded adaptation as a sign of resignation. However, the Stern report in 2007 presented figures on the economic costs of climate change, and awareness about the issue of adaptation has subsequently grown tremendously. The report estimated the cost of adaptation to be tens of billions of US dollars, and furthermore argued that delaying mitigation action would be much more costly in terms of damages in the future than immediate mitigation now. While it is clear that we need more ambitious efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, adaptation must be addressed with equal importance. The sentiment is also reflected in the international negotiations for a post-2012 climate regime under the UNFCCC. Vulnerability to climate change is highest in developing countries. Looking at regions, the IPCC fourth assessment report highlights important developing regions as being especially affected. Africa, and in particular sub-Saharan Africa, because of current low adaptive capacity. An increase of 5 to 8% of arid and semi-arid land by 2080 is projected. Water stress may affect additional hundreds of millions of people. Asian megadeltas are also emphasized due to very large populations at risk from sea level rise, storm surge, and river flooding. And small islands are clearly exposed to sea level rise. And let me add, since I visited Nepal last week, that also those mountainous areas which are highly dependent on glaciers are also very highly at risk. Looking at most vulnerable sectors, we find again sectors of key importance to development, like water resources, agriculture, human health, and infrastructure. And it is the poorest groups that are most exposed to climate change. For instance, urban squatters in flood-prone areas, or poor farmers dependent on marginal rain-fed land. In a survey of 6 countries, the OECD argued that global warming may negatively affect between 12%, for instance in Tanzania, and 65%, for instance in Nepal, of all official development assistance in a given partner country. The World Bank estimated that 25% of its projects are exposed to serious climate risks. Given these vulnerabilities, adaptation has received high recognition with development cooperation. You have titled this session Social Equity, Cohesion and Sustainable Adaptation, which has a fairness and an effectiveness dimension. Stressing these encompasses the need for the developed world to live up to their responsibilities while simultaneously working together with partners in developing countries to deliver effective support for adaptation and to ensure sustainable development achievements in times of climate change. This recognition manifests itself in the increasing demand for and efforts made by development cooperation to address the climate change challenge. I would like to highlight the following. German development efforts on climate change have already increased in recent years, with expenditures of 1 billion euros in 2008 by the Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, and the Ministry of Environment of which roughly 1/3 is for adaptation. The World Bank is currently the biggest financier of adaptation. At the policy level, OECD has just released a guidance on integrating adaptation into development cooperation. What is our view on adaptation and development? Capacity development is key. It is obvious that there has to be a large-scale transfer of financial resources to support poor countries in their adaptation to climate change. Yet, in my view, it is not the lack of financial resources that is the core problem, but rather the lack of capacity. In order to effectively address climate risks, technological capacities and personal expertise in many fields are necessary. For instance, risk management, natural resource and water management, climate modeling. But that alone will not solve the problem. Lasting results can be reached only if the activities and strategies in these various areas are efficiently coordinated and managed. For over 30 years, GTZ's key tasks have included developing its partners' potential and capacities in this respect and moderating processes of learning and change. Concretely, in adaptation to climate change, this means to build capacity to better understand regional and local climate impacts and assessing the vulnerabilities of societies, to build capacity for setting priorities for action and thereby ensuring efficient and effective implementation, and to build capacity for coordinating knowledge and action among stakeholders, which are many in the field of adaptation. Let me stress at this forum that we recognize that adaptation is an issue where the link between practical development work and science is of particular importance. Adaptation means to change behavior, strategies, programs, investments, or even individual behavior based on our knowledge about climate change risks. Scientific findings about what we can expect from climate change, where uncertainties exist, how to translate such findings into easy-to-use information, as well as to improve knowledge about response options, are of key importance. For these reasons, we as GTZ work actively together with the scientific community, for example, the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. Now, what is GTZ doing? I've made the point that development cooperation has a good track record of achieving positive results in improving climate change preparedness through capacity development in partner countries. About 10% of our portfolio in 2008 was relevant to climate change adaptation. We advise on planning and implementing tailored adaptation solutions, promoting existing solutions where possible, for instance, integrated water resource management, and developing and piloting new solutions where needed, for instance, insurance products or adaptation information systems. We provide advice on these issues via local technical support as well as within international policy dialogues. Let me illustrate what impacts have achieved with very concrete examples from our work in GTZ. In Jordan, in the Jordan Valley, farmers have reasons for new hope. Despite a greater frequency of dry winters, which results in less water allocated for irrigating their fields in summer, farmers can still grow vegetables and ensure a steady income for their families. Instead of relying wholly on rainwater, farmers are guaranteed a set amount of treated wastewater from the capital of Amman. Secure access of safe water becomes more and more important in times of climate change, since Jordan is expected to experience a 10% decline in annual precipitation in 2030 compared to 1990. Access to treated wastewater was made possible due to advisory services provided by GTZ.